This is Ashishar Bedekar, and welcome to my podcast, The ARV Show. I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest, Sushant. Sushant is the founder of Geneflectics, and Sushant is driving his vision is to improve the life and health of people. Geneflectics is India's first direct-to-consumer microbiome company and is pioneering the application of microbial technologies to save human and planetary health. The company's unique platform, Protiba, works at the convergence of microbial sequencing, artificial intelligence, and scientific research to develop the pipeline of consumer health solution, precision diagnostics, and precision biotherapeutics for promoting better health and longevity. He's also been featured in leading biotech and lifestyle magazines. Welcome to the show, Sushant. Do share your life journey and how you started your current company and your vision for the future. Over to you, Sushant.
Thanks, Ashish. Thanks for this great opportunity, right? And so a brief about myself, so I do not come from a formal biotech and human biology background, right? So I've a bit about my background. I spent almost 25 years in industry. I bring, blend of both big corporation as well as startups, right? So I work with leading companies in agriculture sector, in farm equipment, in automotive, in financial services, right? Even media entertainment sector, right? I have worked in startup in a media space in Bangalore almost 10 years back. I've also founded healthcare company way back in 2013. That was basically related to diagnostic space, but it was not a typical biotech company, right? And before I started Geneflectics, I have been an resume writing coach for senior folks, for people at CXO level, and I have been helping a lot of CTO, CXO, CFOs in reframing their career portfolio documents, right? So I've worked with clients such as CTO of Wipro, head of strategy for Standard Chartered Bank. So these are some of the clients I've worked for, right? And that's I've been for bring a lot of diverse sort of experience, skill set, right? And in my corporate career, I've actually worked mostly in corporate finance and strategy functions. I've raised maybe thousands and millions of dollars, both on the debt and equity side for both expansion and working capital requirements, right? I've been part of certain M&A and joint venture, transactions where we set up their own, non-bank finance company, right? For financing our captive products, mostly tractors, right? And construction equipment, right? Have been, worked in a lot of different spheres, handle team, handle conflicts, right? So been all around, and Geneflectics is something which is very close to my heart because it all started when my father was diagnosed with cancer. My mother had been suffering from diabetes. I lost my grandmother to heart disease. So I've been a lot of my family members who have suffered from chronic diseases, right? And what I discovered that our current healthcare system, what I usually call is modern industrial healthcare system, is just a symptom care, right? So if you have a symptom, they have a drug, and that's how. So they just try to suppress symptoms rather than finding out what makes us develop a disease, right? So that's why when I started Geneflectics, the question came into my mind: okay, why do we become sick? How do we develop disease, right? We have so much, money being spent on healthcare, on so much technology, so much diagnostic tests, investigation, doctors, right? Sophisticated, tools at the disposal of the healthcare practitioners, and now, coming into artificial intelligence, so there's a lot of things which are coming up, and why we are not able to solve, the epidemic of chronic disease and cancer. And what I realized that, our healthcare system, so I generally, compare in a very simple language, right? So the healthcare system is like our urban planning, right? So So if you see 1990, 80s and 90s, we never thought, every home would have 3 to 4 cars, right? And the entire urban planning was done in a way that, okay, one house will have one car or one scooter, one motorcycle, one two-wheeler, and that's how the structure would be built, right? So and then over a period of time, globalization and a lot of these industrialization happens, and there's a lot of jobs came, and people started keeping, two vehicles, three vehicles, four-wheelers, cars, right? And that's how our urban planning went forward. Similarly, healthcare system was developed. It was developed at a time when we were dying of infections, infectious diseases, right? And then if you go back in 1864, doctors told that, okay, uh, we have these infections. There are a lot of these microorganisms, living inside our body, right? They're harmful and they need to be killed, and that's how penicillin and a lot of these drugs were invented, and they help us got rid of all these infections. But these these drugs never have a name, right? So they killed all the microorganisms, right? And this made us develop chronic diseases, right? So a cure for our infection was the starting point of chronic diseases, right? And just and so this is the problem. We are focused on one thing. We are focused on just managing our symptoms. So if we have obesity or type 2 diabetes or cardiovascular disease, right, we say, okay, we can just suppress our blood sugar level. Let me have some high protein diets, or let me have some low carbs, ketosis, and those a lot of jargons around it, right? Or if I have an blood pressure issue, probably let me take statin. Or if I have a lot of this type 2 diabetes, let me take metformin, right? So these are the current set of interventions what we have, and then we just try to make our pain more bearable. So these are all pharmaceutical strategies, right? So I divide this thing into two parts. One is the pharmaceutical strategy adopted by a healthcare system, right? And they are not at fault. That's what doctor has been taught, right? So doctors in medical school are never taught nutrition, right? So they're just taught, okay, there's a pill for every ill, right? So you have cold, take this pill. You have stomachache, take this pill. You have bloating, take this pill. And similarly, we have these supplements, take this supplement, that supplement, right? So essentially, there has been a gap in actually understanding human biology, right, at a molecular level, right? And that's what these all findings made me, find a purpose of building gene fretletics, building a solution where customers can know what is going on inside their body at a molecular level, at a cellular level, what makes us sick, and how they can actually, actually predict and detect diseases. They can actually find out, if they are moving towards or away a disease, and what kind of, intervention in terms of nutrition can actually help them bring back into a healthy state, right? And that's how, so that's how we started. For the last 4 years, we have been, working in this space. We have helped more than 250 customers till now, take back control of their health in their own hands. So we have addressed customers suffering from, type 2 diabetes, autoimmune disorders, Parkinson's, autism, IBD issues, cardiovascular issues, right? Cirrhosis, skin issues. So, we have addressed a lot of different, disease. And actually the fun part is, that all the root cause of all chronic disease is one thing: inflammation. And probably I'll discuss this when we discuss about the microbiome part, right? So, and so it's funny that for every stream, if you have a stomach ache, you go to a gastroenterologist. If you have diabetes, you go to endocrinologist or a diabetologist. But the thing is, the root cause is same thing, right? So when you're going to different doctors, you are actually just trying to manage that particular organ of your body, right? Rather than finding out what is causing that organ to dysfunction, right? So that's the basic what we are doing. Obviously, coming on to technology part, so we generally so basically I'll share a bit and we'll discuss more about this, right? So we are focusing on the human microbiome, right? So if Ashik, you allow me, I'll probably share a bit about the human genome, how our body is structured, and then probably I'll come back to that.
Yeah, that's great. And in fact, thanks for the preface to this. And it's really inspiring that even though you don't have a medical background, you were able to start a company in this with with a solid thing. And I think based on the kind of areas which you are looking at, that's really good. Just a small query. So for all this, does it require some special approvals or regulatory approvals for your company to start in this space in which you are operating?
No. So what we do is, so we are not diagnosing or treating a disease, right? So we are actually telling you, we are decoding your biology. We're telling you what is going on inside your body, right?
Okay.
And we are helping you predict. So in terms of, just give an example, right? So when I study your biology at a molecular level, we can tell you, what is your metabolic health, what is your immune system health, what is your brain health, what is your skin health, right? And looking at various pathways, various biological pathways, we can tell you, okay, if you are following the lifestyle and the nutrition choice what you're doing right now, right? In next 3 years, 5 years, going to develop ABC blah blah disease, right?
Okay.
So I can tell you whether you are going to develop a disease or not, when you're going to develop a disease, right? And we then give you, sort of intervention in terms of right nutrition, right? So that you can actually come back to reverse it, so you don't even develop a disease, right? So for the people who are at the risk of developing disease, so there is no diagnostic treatment. So as of now, it is something very, very at a nascent stage in India, and there's no approval required, because it's just a clinical grade, sequencing method which we use to give nutrition interventions, right? As of now, not so, but in our future plan, where we intend to get into sort of small molecule drugs to actually reverse diseases, then probably we would need competent authority approvals.
Got it. That's great. So as we discussed, like to have a format in which the guest talks about top 5 tips or trends in a specific area. And given your work in this space, it would be great if you could talk about the top 5 trends in human microbiome that is shaping the future of health. And it would be really helpful for the audience. So with that, over to you, Sushant. What would be the first trend in your view?
So I'll talk about, so let me divide into time phases, right? So I'll talk about time phase from late 1980s to 2003, right? So we all know in US, the Human Genome Project was launched, right? It was an Indian Genome Project was also launched later in India, right? But it didn't work well. So, for years we have been given to understand that, our genes are responsible for our state of our health, for our chronic diseases, right? And there have been a lot of research on various genes, human genes, which actually we acquire from our parents, we get from our mom and dad, right? And there were a lot of research on finding a causation between genes and number of chronic diseases, diabetes, obesity, and a lot of these things, right? And this project is started in 1990, culminated in 2003, and there's a lot of research, but there was not definite outcomes, right? And so the outcome was, okay, we know the genes, so essentially. When we are born, we actually acquire genes from our mom and dad, right? So it defines our hereditary, our characteristics, our ancestry, right? The way we behave, a lot of these things, right? But it remains same from the time we're born to the time we die, right? Even if you say we share the DNA, you and me share 99.8% DNA. I even share DNA with a tree, right? So it's and how this works is, what matters. So these are the questions which I usually ask, right? So if everyone share the same DNA, right, on every body organs, right? So my eyes, my heart, my lungs, my hand, my skin would have the same DNA, but why not then my eyes is on my head, and my hands are on the back side, or why don't I have a neck on my head, right? So there are a lot of these questions. It's all about how your genes are being expressed, right? So you won't find your hands here, right? So that's how our body has been structured. So the first trend is obviously genomics, what we call is gene plus omics, the study of genes, right? And study of genes did tell that we can have so genes can tell you, okay, I have a potential of a particular disease. For instance, if I talk of FTO gene, which is one of the genes for obesity, right? If I do my genetic testing and FTO gene comes, right? So most of the healthcare practitioners would say, okay, you have an FTO gene, you will develop obesity. But what it tells that I have a potential to develop, it is not necessary I will develop, right? So it's how that genes is being expressed, right? So if it is overexpressed, then I will probably develop obesity, right? So genes tell a potential, right, that I may or may not develop. But when I really develop it, it is not about genes. So that's this is where and lot of science around it is not finding that that genes is not your destiny. Do not blame your ancestors. For instance, recently a study came on 1002 twins, right? And it showed that there was an inter-individual variability in their glycemic response, in their glucose response to same foods, right? So the twins eating the same thing had different blood sugar spikes, right? So but twins have the same genes, right? So how is it possible? So that's why there are a lot of these research coming on. There are a lot of research which shows that genes is not the major cause of genetic diseases, right? And obviously there has been gene mutation. There are rare genetic disorder which happens during the mutation, during the cell, during the DNA damage, right? But that is only what we call is rare disease because they are rare, right? It may be found in 5% of the cases, but not in an entire 95% of the cases, right? So that is the one trend. Obviously, it's important to understand if you have a rare genetic disorder, if you want to understand your ancestry, your characteristics, right? Probably that's, or maybe, using it for a lot of, by civic authorities in case of investigation into some criminal activities. So genes or understanding your ethnicity, probably these are few things where your genomics would work, right? But not from a chronic disease perspective.
Right. So that's the thing, understanding or appreciation that the human genome and the impact it has on health and lifestyle and other things is great. So would you say you operate in the same space as companies like, say, 23andMe or similar?
No. So I'll give you some fun facts, right? So the 3 fun facts we should understand, which everyone would listening to the show would change their view to how they view their health, right? So when we talk of genes, right? So we get around 25,000 genes from our parents, right? When we are born, right? But this is only at best 1% of the total genes in our body, and at worst 0.1%, right? So our microbes, right? So again, microbes is what I call as the collection of different microorganisms living on and inside of different parts of the body, right from our mouth to our skin to stomach to small intestine to large intestine to vagina in case of females, on scalp, everywhere, right? So these microbes express around 2 to 20 million genes, right? So essentially, if you see, at birth we are 1% human, at worst we are 0.1% human being, right? So again, if we are talking of human genes, we are just talking about 1% of your genetic profile.
Got it. Excellent. So the first trend which you mentioned is really important, the importance and appreciation of the human genome. What would be the second tip for the listeners in terms of what are the other things people should know about this area?
Okay, so when it comes to health, you do understand that your body is a container for these microorganisms which I shared, right? So our body has 100 trillion microorganisms, right? So the thing is, in simple words, there's so many, so our body is a sack of, tens of thousands of chemical reactions. So there's so many chemical reactions. In simple words, we as a human host cannot do it, right? So we've outsourced those functions to our microbes living at various places inside the gut. So for our microbes, just from a basic perspective, 57% of the cells inside our body belong to these microbes, right? 70% of immune cells, right, live along these microbes along our gut, along our large intestine, right? So microbes, what they do is they regulate our satiety, they regulate our blood sugar response, right? They make sure that we are getting the right nutrients from the food. They regulate or they minimize or they neutralize pathogens. They communicate with brain, telling them when they're hungry, when you're full, right? They even regulate your behavior, your emotions, your mental health. They also tell immune cells when to be calm and when to attack, right? So they can help different and so there's a lot of these functions. I've just named some of them, right? A lot of these functions done by the microbiome, right? So the second trend is, when you talk of health, your health, you should first talk of health of your microbiome. So in simple words, uh, you are not feeding yourself, you're feeding them. So whatever you eat is actually goes to your microbiome, and these microbiomes actually, you know, absorbs whatever you eat and convert into byproducts. So the nutrients what you get, whether it is vitamin, mineral, magnesium, potassium, vitamin A, vitamin D, is nothing but poop of microbes, right? So right. So essentially the largest colonization or the largest colony of microbes living in a large intestine, right? And they are said to link to number of diseases, right from obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, cancer situations, skin issues, right? Your chronic kidney disease, non fatty liver disease, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, autism, a lot of these things, right? So your gut microbiome holds key to your health. And another important aspect where it is important to mention, because in India, there are 4 or 5 companies working on the gut microbiome space, right? And what a lot of companies focus again is on genes, or which microbes are living inside your body, right? So it is very simple, so our body, our cells do not have eyes and ears like we do, right? So they just understand the chemical signals, right? So what we really need to understand is not which bacteria is there, but we need to understand is what those bacteria are doing inside our body, right? Who are active, what they are doing, what biochemical things they are producing, what metabolites or what byproducts they are producing, and how these byproducts are impacting our health, right? So unlike us, almost apart from us, all the companies focus on which bacteria are there, right? So for instance, let me give an example. Same bacteria which gives you vitamin B12 to you may cause diabetes in me, right? So it all depends upon, if you give good environment, they'll do good things. If you give bad environment, they'll do bad things. So there's nothing called as good or bad, bacteria or microbes. It is about what environment you are giving them. For instance, you may be CEO in your office, you may be a cook at your home, right? So it all depends upon what environment you're living, what you're doing, right? So essentially, we really need to focus on not on which microbe is there, but what functions they perform, right? In simple words, for the listeners, if you have a toothache, right? If you come to me, Sushant, I have a toothache, right? What should I do, right? So unless I tell you my name is Sushant and I'm a dentist, so probably you will find, okay, Sushant can solve my problem. Otherwise, if I tell you my name is Sushant, it doesn't explain anything. Whether I can be dentist, I can be accountant, I can be a businessman, I can be CEO, I can be entrepreneur, I can be anyone, right? So that's how we really need to understand who is doing what function, right? And that's how where we at Gene Freakletics are different. So what we focus is on the genes expression, right? We focus on the genes expression of the microbes, right? So for instance, a microbe may have 100,000 genes, but all may not be expressed at one point in time, right? So what we need is what specific genes are being expressed by a particular microbe. So out of 100,000, maybe only 10,000 genes are being expressed. Now, how those genes are, whether they are underexpressed or overexpressed, right? Obviously, we use technology and statistical models to evaluate that, right? And the expression obviously the expression, how this expression impact our human genes expression, how do our human hosts respond to it, right? And what it produces inside the body, and these byproducts, whether it gives us health or disease.
Got it.
Right?
Got it.
So,
So just like gut, I guess there would also be an oral microbiome, which is in in our mouth. Okay.
yeah.
Right.
So again, oral microbiome is, it's really interesting, right? Probably, we don't know that, there are 100 billion microbes living inside a mouth, right? Everywhere, right? And they are the second largest diverse population after gut, right? And it is the most fascinating part, right? So we recently launched our oral microbiome solution, right? And but we have been detailing a lot about it, and a lot of these things. So a certain microbe in our mouth, right, can actually make us develop heart disease, or can regulate our blood pressure, right? These, if or probably, there are certain byproducts released by a microbiome which can cause type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's, right? Even cancer, right? And even irritable bowel syndrome, right? So a lot of these things, so obviously, you remember our parents, our grandmother used to tell, okay, chew your food, right? They were talking science. So when you chew your food, actually your oral microbiome pre-digests the food, right? And that makes sure that various nutrients are made available to the small intestine. Plus, they also release a lot of metabolites, which signals, your other body organs, gut, your pancreas, even that, what is coming down, right? So it's a very classic example. So when we talk of artificial sweeteners or sodas, right? When you take artificial sweeteners or sodas, we say, okay, no, it doesn't matter. There's just a research which says, okay, it can cause diabetes, it can cause obesity. So what happens is, it is very important to understand when your oral microbiome, come across this soda or this artificial sweetener or aspartame or saccharin or these artificial sweeteners, which you may find in a lot of chocolates and a lot of drinks and a lot of these things, right? So they think that something sweet is coming, so they actually send a chemical signal to your pancreas. Okay, I've come across something sweet, right? Be ready to start releasing insulin because glucose is coming your way, right? And when they pre-digest and the byproduct is released, so there's no glucose to be metabolized, right? Because there's no glucose in artificial sweeteners, right? So essentially, your pancreas is continuously releasing insulin, and over a period of time, it leads to your body become insulin intolerant. Your body becomes insulin, it causes insulin resistance, and it causes type 2 diabetes, right? So it's a very simple, basic common sense, right? There's an interaction between, if you're eating sweet, right, it will tell your pancreas that, I've come across something sweet, please start releasing insulin. So if you've taken some sweet, some rasgulla, something, or some chocolate which is laden with sugar, some candies, right? So it is actually going to tell your pancreas to release insulin. Similarly, people who have this periodontal disease or the disease of cavities also have high risk of type 2 diabetes, in male erectile dysfunction, right? So it's a very delicate balance. So when you have these bacteria, suppose you're eating too much of sugar, or you are actually maybe your mouth is very open always, so you're taking a lot of acidic thing, right? So I'll help you understand this. Really important that every organ inside a body has a pH level, potential for hydrogen, right? And it has to be mildly acidic, it has to be neutral. It should not be too much alkaline, or it should not be too much acidic. So what happens is, when you consume sugar, right, so your microbiome in your mouth converts sugar into some acids, which increases your acid level, and that becomes a breeding ground for a lot of pathogens. So now these pathogens can start doing bad things, and they can actually move from there to different parts of the body. Like they can move to brain, they can trigger inflammation in the brain. It can increase the risk of dementia. They can cause the placentia barrier. It can cause preterm births and low weight births in females, right? So oral microbiome, your mouth is linked to your entire body, right? And and we are the only company in Asia, in fact, working on the oral microbial genes expression part.
Great,
Right?
great.
So
Fantastic. So, in the interest of time, let's quickly also talk about a few other items. And, from what I understand, it kind of really underscores the need for healthy eating and, healthy living. Because, so essentially, what the key takeaway from me is more processed food is potential for more problems. Because you're not feeding the right kind of food or nutrients for your microbiome gut. The second key takeaway for me is more natural food is better, or which is maybe which you are used to is better. Anything which is artificial or so, you use it in moderation, right? Because even, for example, like you mentioned, like colas or anything sweet, that has its own challenges. And what you said also linked with the fact that areas of overuse of, say, pesticides or insecticides, etc., they still remain in the food chain, right? And are potentially playing havoc with overall area. So that's great. So any specific tips for our audience in terms of what they should be eating or what they should not be eating at a generic level? I mean, of course, you rightly mentioned, every body is unique, but a general rule of thumb, right?
So let me explain this. This is really, really interesting. We should know that exactly what is nutrition, what is food, right? When we generally talk of food, we generally talk in terms of protein, carbs, fats, fiber, right? And we are just focused on counting calories or how much we are eating, how much of carbs, protein, and last year we become a protein obsessed nation. But here it's an interesting part, right? So entire food ecosystem taken together, right, is a stack of 25,000 plus molecules and chemicals and food substrates, right? So you have polyphenols, you have antioxidants, you have lycopene, you have nicotine, you have a lot of these things, right? A lot of antioxidants, and apart from protein and carbs and fats and vitamins and minerals and short chain fatty acids, long chain fatty acids, a lot of these things, right? So it all depends upon, since I shared that 99% of the body is genes expressed in the body are microbes, so our body has limited capacity, right? It all depends upon how these molecules. So consider this, that your gut microbiome is a chemical factory, right? So when these chemicals get into a chemical factory, these chemicals are processed by the workers. The workers are the microbiome, the microbes. So they metabolize these chemicals and convert into byproducts. Now these byproducts are released in your bloodstream. These byproducts can be like vitamin A, vitamin D, magnesium, potassium, or can be bad things like oxalate, glycerine, and methane, ammonia, which can lead to inflammation, which can actually change your genes expression, which can make you develop disease. Right?
Fantastic.
So that's how you should see nutrition, right? Going beyond this protein stuff, right?
Got it. Excellent. I think that was a great perspective, and that was really helpful and useful for the audience. Thank you again, Sushant, for your time, and really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.